My name is Alexandra Morgan, 32 years old, and I never thought silence could be so deafening. That Thanksgiving morning, I woke to an empty house, no kitchen clatter, no football pregame, nothing. My phone showed 0 messages. Downstairs, a hastily scribbled note waited on the counter. Had to leave early. Enjoy your day off. Then I saw it, Instagram notifications. My entire family, parents, siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins, all tagged at a luxury Aspen resort. Thanksgiving dinner preparations underway. Without me, that's when I realized this wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. Before I dive into how my entire family abandoned me on Thanksgiving, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below, and if you've ever experienced family betrayal, hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about family drama healing and finding your own strength. Now let's get into how I discovered what my family had been planning behind my back for months. For as long as I could remember, I'd been the reliable one in the Morgan family. The responsible daughter. The one who always showed up. While my brother Ryan moved across the country to find himself in Seattle's tech scene, and my younger sister Heather bounced between failed relationships and career changes, I stayed. I was the steady hand, the one who never caused problems. When I graduated with my business degree 8 years ago, I had offers from marketing firms in Chicago and New York. Dad looked so proud during the ceremony, but Mom's reaction was different. That's wonderful, Alexandra, but what about your father's restaurant? You know he's been hoping you'd come work with him. The family restaurant Morgan's Table had been a fixture in our town for 30 years. My grandmother started it, my father expanded it, and apparently I was expected to maintain it. So I did what I always did. I put my dreams on hold. Those marketing offers, I declined them both, telling myself it was just temporary. I'd help Dad get the restaurant modernized, then pursue my own path. 1 year turned into 8. For the past 6 months, I'd been working 70-hour weeks. Dad suffered a heart attack in May, and suddenly the entire operation fell on my shoulders. Mom claimed she was too busy caring for him to help with a business he supposedly loved. Ryan was too established in his Seattle life to come home. Heather tried to help for exactly 2 weeks before deciding the work was too stressful. So I stepped up. I revamped menus, negotiated with suppliers, managed staff conflicts, and kept the books balanced. I slept on the office couch more nights than I care to admit. The restaurant wasn't just surviving, it was thriving under my management. The friction with Mom started when I wanted to expand our social media presence. Alexandra restaurants don't need all that internet nonsense, she'd say, despite our competitors successfully using those exact strategies. When I introduced a new cocktail menu that doubled our bar revenue, she complained about changing too much of your father's vision. Nothing was ever good enough. 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, I stumbled across something odd. While using Dad's tablet to show him our improved profit margins, a notification popped up from a group chat called Family Matters. I'd never seen it before, and I wasn't in it. I didn't think much of it then. Maybe it was just the extended family planning Christmas. The last family dinner before Thanksgiving was tense. Mom kept making little comments about how I was married to that restaurant and never had time for family anymore. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was literally saving the family business. Dad stayed quiet as always. Ryan called in from Seattle making vague promises about visiting soon. Heather spent the entire dinner texting someone and barely looked up. After everyone left, I cleaned up alone as usual. That's when I found it tucked under a pile of mail, a receipt for a luxury chalet rental in Aspen, Colorado, dated for Thanksgiving weekend. Reserved 2 months ago. For 12 people, exactly our family size, including extended family. -1. Minus me. I stared at that piece of paper for what felt like hours. They'd been planning this for months. The group chat suddenly made sense. The whispered phone calls. The way conversations would stop when I walked into a room. All the times Mom had asked about my Thanksgiving schedule at the restaurant. They weren't just excluding me from a trip, they were excluding me from the family. After finding that receipt, I didn't sleep. I sat in my apartment above the restaurant, staring at my phone, debating whether to call. By morning, I was equal parts exhausted, angry, and heartbroken. When I finally worked up the courage to call Mom at 7 a.m. on Thanksgiving morning, she answered on the fourth ring. "Hello?" Her voice had that forced, casual tone, the one she used when pretending nothing was wrong. "Mom, where are you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. A pause. Background noise, laughter, glasses clinking. "Oh, Alexandra, we're in Aspen. Didn't you get our note?" A note. That's all I get. A note saying, "Enjoy your day off," while everyone flies to Aspen for a luxury Thanksgiving. Another pause. I could almost see her performing mental gymnastics to formulate an excuse. "Well, sweetheart, we thought you'd be too busy with the restaurant. You're always saying how Thanksgiving is your biggest day of the year." I gripped the phone tighter. "The restaurant is closed for Thanksgiving. I told everyone that at dinner last week. I specifically said I was looking forward to spending time with family." "Did you? I don't recall that." Her voice chilled slightly. "Anyway, you never seem to enjoy family gatherings anymore. Always checking your phone, talking about work. We thought you'd prefer having some alone time." The blood pounded in my ears. So instead of asking me, you all decided to go on vacation without even telling me, "Alexandra, you're overreacting." It was a last-minute decision. "I found the receipt, Mom. You booked this 2 months ago." Silence. "Then I need to go. Your father needs help with something." Before I could respond, Ryan's voice came on the line. My brother, who I'd covered for countless times growing up, who I'd loaned money to when his first tech venture failed, whose side I'd always taken. "Alex, don't make this a bigger deal than it is," he said, his voice dripping with that condescending tone he'd perfected in recent years. "Mom and Dad needed a break. We all did. You've been so wrapped up in the restaurant lately." "The restaurant that's keeping our family financially afloat," I snapped. "The one Dad would have lost if I hadn't stepped in. That restaurant. Look, we appreciate what you're doing, but you've been impossible to be around. Always stressed, always complaining about how hard you're working. Nobody wanted to deal with that energy during the holidays." I ended the call before I said something unforgivable. My hands were shaking so badly, I dropped my phone twice. 10 minutes later, Heather posted more photos. The family gathered around a fireplace in matching sweaters. Everyone tagged. Everyone except me. The caption read, "So blessed to have the whole family together for this special holiday. Number, Morgan family tradition." My Aunt Catherine, Mom's sister, and the only person who occasionally stood up for me, sent a private message an hour later. "Alexandra, sweetie, I'm so sorry about this. I thought you knew and had chosen not to come. Your mother said you were too busy with work and didn't want to close the restaurant. I should have checked with you directly. If it helps, I did question why you weren't included in the planning. It didn't help. Not when I discovered the next betrayal." While going through recent bank statements for the restaurant, I found a transfer of $25,000 from the business account to my parents' personal account dated 2 weeks ago. More than enough to cover a luxury Thanksgiving getaway in Aspen. They had used restaurant profits from my 70-hour work weeks, my sacrificed social life, my delayed dreams to fund a vacation they deliberately excluded me from. As I stared at that bank statement, something hardened inside me. A lifetime of being the good daughter, the reliable one, the one who sacrificed, and for what to be discarded when convenient. "I'll never let them treat me like this again," I whispered to the empty office. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider what revenge might look like. With nowhere else to go on Thanksgiving, I headed to the restaurant. Even though we were closed to customers, I thought some paperwork might distract me. What I found instead pushed me over the edge. The place was in disarray. Invoices that needed immediate attention were piled on my desk. Vendor messages about missed meetings. 3 staff emails about scheduling conflicts for the coming week. And a bank notification about another withdrawal $15,000 made by my father just before they left for Aspen. The withdrawal slip read emergency business expenses. What emergency required $30,000 in cash right before a family vacation I wasn't invited to? I called Anthony, our head bartender, who often opened on weekends. "Did my father stop by the restaurant last week?" I asked when he answered. A hesitation. "Yeah, he was in on Tuesday with your mom. They were in the office for about an hour." "I thought you knew. Did they say anything to you?" Another pause. "Not really. Your mom asked if business had been good, if we were hitting our targets. Normal stuff." He hesitated again. But what, Anthony?" "She did ask some of us how we felt about working for you. Said she was concerned about staff morale under your management." My stomach dropped. "What did you tell her?" "The truth that you're the best manager we've had." Everyone said the same except for Carmen, but she's only been here a month. After thanking him, I sat in stunned silence. My mother had been actively undermining me with the staff, questioning my leadership, looking for ammunition. I was still processing this when Sophia, our head chef and my closest friend at the restaurant, knocked on the office door. The look on her face told me she knew something. "Alex, I need to show you something," she said, closing the door behind her. "I've been debating whether to tell you, but after hearing you weren't invited to the family trip." She pulled out her phone and showed me a series of emails. My mother had contacted a restaurant consultant 3 months ago, complaining about outdated management and seeking advice on transitioning leadership. Another email discussed concerns about the direction I was taking the restaurant. "She tried to recruit me," Sophia admitted. "Asked if I thought the staff would respond better to more traditional management. When I defended you, she stopped talking to me altogether." My hands shook as I scrolled through the messages. "How did you get these?" She accidentally copied me on an email chain. When she realized her mistake, she asked me to delete them without reading. I almost did, but something felt off. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. While I was working myself to exhaustion, saving the family business, my own mother was actively sabotaging me. But the worst was yet to come. As Sophia and I combed through files, looking for more evidence of my mother's interference, we found a folder labeled Morgan's Future. Inside were documents that shattered whatever remaining loyalty I felt toward my family. Draft sale agreements, financial projections for the restaurant under new ownership, a non-disclosure agreement, and emails between my father and Harvest Restaurant Group, a corporate chain known for buying successful family restaurants and turning them into bland, commercialized versions of themselves. They were planning to sell the restaurant. Without telling me. After I had poured 8 years of my life into it. One email from my father made my blood run cold. "My daughter currently manages the daily operations, but she won't be an obstacle to the transition. We can handle that internally before finalizing the sale." I wouldn't be an obstacle. I was a problem to be handled. Worse still, I found email exchanges between Ryan and my parents discussing the sale. My brother, who had shown zero interest in the restaurant for years, wrote, "Once Alex is out of the picture, I can fly in to help with the transition. The corporate experience will look good on my resume." I sat back in my chair, the documents scattered across the desk. Years of my life. Dreams postponed. Relationships sacrificed. All for a business my family was planning to sell out from under me. I felt something inside me crack. In the middle of the restaurant kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of my family's betrayal, I broke down. Years of suppressed anger and hurt poured out in heaving sobs that left me gasping for air. Sophia sat with me, her hand on my back, letting me purge years of being the perfect, reliable daughter. When I finally caught my breath, she looked me straight in the eyes. Alex, it's time to stand up for yourself. Your family is counting on you rolling over like you always do. They think you'll be hurt, maybe cry a little, then come back begging for their approval. What if you didn't? I wiped my face and looked around the kitchen. This place that I had poured my heart into, that I had saved, that I had made better. It's time they learned who they're really dealing with, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. I'm done being the doormat in this family. The week after Thanksgiving, my family returned from Aspen, tanned, relaxed, and apparently expecting business as usual. No one called to check on me. No one apologized for the miscommunication about the trip. They simply walked back into their lives and mine as if nothing had happened. Mom showed up at the restaurant on their first day back, holding a small gift bag. I brought you a souvenir, she said, placing it on my desk. Inside was a refrigerator magnet with Aspen written in cursive letters. The price tag was still attached, $4.99. Thanks, I said, setting it aside without enthusiasm. If she noticed my coldness, she didn't acknowledge it. Instead, she perched on the edge of my desk, something she knew I hated, and announced, "Your father wants to have a family meeting this Sunday about the future of the business. Everyone needs to be there. It's important." The future of the business. I knew exactly what that meant now. "I'll be there," I said, forcing a smile. She patted my hand. "Good. We've missed you, Alexandra. The trip would have been perfect if you'd been there." The lie hung in the air between us. I just nodded, not trusting myself to speak. After she left, I called my cousin Meredith. She worked at the accounting firm that handled our family's finances and had always been friendly to me, if not particularly close. We'd bonded years ago when she confided in me about her mother's drinking problem, and I thought I could trust her. "Meredith, can we meet for coffee? I need some family advice." 2 hours later, we sat in a quiet corner of a cafe far from the restaurant. Meredith seemed genuinely sympathetic about the Thanksgiving incident. "That's awful, Alex." "I can't believe Aunt Diane would do that," she said, shaking her head. "The whole family, without telling you." I nodded, watching her reaction carefully. "Have you heard anything about plans for the restaurant? Dad wants to have a meeting about the future this weekend." A flicker of something recognition discomfort crossed her face before she composed herself. "I've heard some discussions about modernization bringing in new investors. Nothing concrete." She was lying. I could tell from the way she wouldn't quite meet my eyes. The same way she'd looked when lying about breaking my favorite necklace when we were teens. "Investors? Or buyers?" I pressed. She sighed. "Look, I shouldn't be talking about this. Client confidentiality and all that. I'm Family Meredith, and I've invested 8 years of my life in this business." That seemed to hit home. She leaned forward. "From what I understand, they're considering a buyout offer. Harvest Restaurant Group has made a generous offer, but nothing's signed yet. And no one thought I should know about this. I'm only the person running the place." Meredith had the grace to look embarrassed. "I think Uncle Thomas wanted to wait until it was more certain. The deal hinges on this quarter's numbers, which have been surprisingly good under your management. So my success is making it easier for them to sell out from under me." The irony was almost too much. "If it helps," she offered, "I heard your dad insisted on a provision that you'd be offered a management position with Harvest if you wanted it." It didn't help. A corporate management position was not why I'd sacrificed 8 years of my life. I confided in Meredith about how betrayed I felt, how years of being the reliable daughter had earned me nothing but exclusion and secrets. She seemed genuinely sympathetic, offering advice about standing up for myself and demanding recognition. For the next few days, I gathered documentation of everything I'd done for the restaurant. Financial records showing our improved position since I took over management. Marketing initiatives that had increased our customer base. staff retention numbers that were the envy of other restaurants in town. I was building my case, preparing to fight for what I deserved at the upcoming family meeting. But Sophia pulled me aside 3 days after my coffee with Meredith. "Be careful what you share with your cousin," she warned. "Carmen overheard her on the phone in the ladies' room yesterday, telling someone everything you discussed over coffee." "Are you sure?" I asked, though in my gut, I already knew. Carmen said she specifically heard Meredith say, "Alex is gathering evidence to fight the sale." Then something about needing to warn Aunt Diane. That evening, I positioned myself near the restaurant's office, ostensibly doing inventory. Sure enough, Meredith arrived around 6, slipping into the back entrance and heading straight for my mother's small office. I couldn't hear everything, but snippets were enough. "Becoming a problem. Documentation of everything. Might have legal grounds to block. Needs to be managed carefully." And most damning, my mother's voice crystal clear through the thin wall. "We need to move faster. Thomas is getting cold feet about cutting Alexandra out completely. If she makes a scene, he might back out of the deal entirely." Meredith's response chilled me. "Don't worry, Aunt Diane. I've been keeping track of everything she's doing. She trusts me completely. I barely made it to the bathroom before throwing up my body, physically rejecting this new betrayal." Meredith, who I'd comforted through her parents' divorce, who I'd helped get her first accounting job, who I'd trusted with my pain, had been my mother's spy all along. When I got home that night, I collapsed on my bed, nearly giving in to despair. My family, my cousin, the business I'd given, everything to all of it built on lies and manipulation. For a moment, I considered walking away from all of it, letting them have their precious sale, moving somewhere new, starting fresh. But something inside me refused to surrender. A voice that sounded surprisingly like my grandmother's whispered, "They expect you to run away. They're counting on it." I'd been played for a fool, but no more. My mother, my father, Ryan, and now Meredith, they had all underestimated me. They thought I was still the compliant daughter who would eventually fall in line. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The call came the following afternoon from a number I didn't recognize. "Alexandra Morgan. This is James Winters." James Winters was my family's longtime attorney. He'd handled everything from my grandmother's estate to business contracts for the restaurant. I'd always seen him as one of my father's people, another middle-aged man in the network of golf buddies and business associates who formed my father's inner circle. "Mr. Winters," I said cautiously, "what can I do for you? I was hoping we could meet. Privately. There are matters regarding the restaurant that concern me professionally. Are you available this evening?" Something in his tone made me agree. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop 2 towns over where we were unlikely to run into anyone we knew. James was already waiting when I arrived, his usual immaculate suit replaced by casual attire that made him almost unrecognizable. He stood to greet me, his expression grave. "Thank you for meeting me, Alexandra. I'm taking a significant professional risk by having this conversation." My guard immediately went up. Why would speaking with me be a risk? He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Because I've been instructed not to discuss certain business matters with you, specifically the potential sale of Morgan's table." "On whose authority?" "Your parents, primarily your mother. They're my clients, which puts me in an ethical dilemma." I started to rise. "If you can't talk to me, why are we here?" "Please sit," he said quickly. "While I can't breach client confidentiality, I'm also bound by certain professional ethics. What's happening with the restaurant involves questionable practices that concern me deeply." I slowly sat back down. "I'm listening. For the past year, I've noticed irregularities in how the business is being managed financially. Unusual transfers, incomplete documentation, tax filings that don't align with reported earnings." He slid a folder across the table. "This contains copies of public records, only nothing protected by attorney-client privilege." The folder contained property records, tax assessments, and corporate filings for Morgan's Table dating back to its founding. Nothing illegal about sharing these, but the subtext was clear. James was pointing me toward something. I don't understand what I'm looking for, I admitted after scanning several pages. Your grandmother, Elizabeth Morgan, was a remarkable businesswoman, he said, seemingly changing subjects. She founded the restaurant with very specific intentions about its future. I barely knew her. She died when I was 8. Yes, but she knew you, Alexandra. She watched you even then. In her final years, she made certain provisions. He tapped a document in the folder. The original ownership structure of Morgan's Table is interesting reading, as is her will. I frowned, pulling out the highlighted sections. My grandmother had established Morgan's Table as a family business, but with unique provisions, majority ownership transferred to her son, my father, but with a clause stating that any direct descendant who worked in the business for over 5 consecutive years would be entitled to a 20% ownership stake. I had worked there for 8 years. This can't be right, I said. I would have been told. James's expression was carefully neutral. Were you provided with a copy of your grandmother's will when you joined the business? No. I was just offered a management position. I see. His tone conveyed volumes. Are you saying I own 20% of the restaurant? I'm not saying anything officially. I'm merely pointing out public records that might interest you. I leaned back, stunned. If I own 20%, they can't sell without my agreement. A reasonable conclusion. Additionally, the will stipulates that if the business is sold, the proceeds must be distributed according to ownership percentages established at time of sale. My mind was racing. Does my mother know about this clause? Your mother was present when the will was read. She's fully aware of all provisions. His expression darkened slightly. In fact, she's consulted me several times about potential workarounds. Workarounds. Ways to nullify your claim. For instance, if you were to resign voluntarily or be terminated cause the 5-year clock would reset. Suddenly, everything made sense. My mother's sabotage, the staff questioning, the attempt to make me look incompetent. They weren't just trying to push me aside. They were trying to invalidate my legal claim to part of the business. What about the money they've been taking from the restaurant accounts? Over $40,000 in the past month alone. James frowned. Without seeing the specific transactions, I can't comment. But generally speaking, significant withdrawals by one partner without others' consent could be problematic, especially in preparation for a sale. For the next hour, James walked me through the legal realities of my situation, careful never to explicitly advise me against his other clients. He was maintaining plausible deniability while giving me a roadmap. As we prepared to leave, I had to ask, "Why are you helping me, Mr. Winters?" He was quiet for a moment. "I've practiced law for 35 years. I've represented your family for 20 of those years. In that time, I've watched you grow into a remarkably capable young woman who has been." He paused, choosing his words carefully. Undervalued. Additionally, I had enormous respect for your grandmother. She would be. Another careful pause, disappointed in how certain aspects of her wishes have been managed. As I drove home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope. I wasn't powerless. I had rights my family had deliberately kept hidden from me. And now I had knowledge. The next day, my mother called, her voice suspicious. "Alexandra, James Winters mentioned he ran into you yesterday. Something about bumping into you at a coffee shop. So James had protected himself." Smart man. "Yes, I was grabbing coffee after meeting with a supplier. We chatted briefly about Dad's health." A pause. Nothing else. Nothing about the restaurant. Should there have been? I kept my voice innocently curious. "No, of course not. We're trying to keep your father's stress levels down." Business talk upsets him. I understand completely, Mom. I'm looking forward to Sunday's family meeting. I have some ideas to contribute. Another pause longer this time. Ideas about the future of the restaurant. Isn't that what the meeting is about? Yes, but your father and I have been developing a specific plan. We're really just sharing decisions already made. Well, I'm sure you'll be open to input from the person who's been running the place for the past 6 months. See you Sunday, Mom. I hung up before she could respond. That evening, I met with James again, this time in his office after hours. He helped me understand my exact legal position and the documentation I would need to assert my rights. He couldn't represent me directly, that would be a conflict of interest, but he could explain the law. By the time I left his office, I had a clear strategy. My family had used my loyalty against me for years. Now that same dedication to the restaurant would be my strongest weapon. The family meeting was 3 days away. I spent every spare moment preparing, gathering evidence, and steeling myself for the confrontation to come. They thought they were bringing me to an execution. Instead, I was walking into battle armed with something they never expected me to discover: the truth. Sunday arrived with an unseasonable chill. Appropriate, I thought, for what was about to unfold. The family meeting was scheduled at my parents' house, neutral territory compared to the restaurant itself. I arrived precisely on time to find everyone already gathered in the living room. Mom looking polished in a cashmere sweater. Dad paler than usual in his armchair. Ryan, who had apparently flown in specifically for this meeting. Heather scrolling through her phone as usual. Uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia, Mom's brother, and his wife. Even Meredith was there, avoiding my eyes. My mother's raised eyebrows at my professional attire, black blazer, crisp white shirt, tailored pants, suggested she'd expected me to arrive in my usual restaurant casual wear. I'd brought a leather portfolio containing all my documentation. Her eyes flickered to it nervously. Alexandra, we were just about to start, Mom said, gesturing to the only empty seat, a low ottoman far from the center of the room. A deliberate positioning, placing me literally and figuratively beneath everyone else. Actually, I'd prefer to stand for now, I replied, moving to a position where everyone could see me clearly. Dad cleared his throat. We've asked you all here because Diane and I have made an important decision about Morgan's table. My mother jumped in, unable to contain herself. We've received an excellent offer from Harvest Restaurant Group. They're prepared to modernize the restaurant while keeping its essential character. The amount they're offering is substantial. Murmurs of approval rippled through the room. Ryan leaned forward, suddenly animated. The contract includes maintaining the Morgan name, and they're willing to bring in their corporate marketing team to expand the brand. It's an incredible opportunity. And what happens to the current staff? I asked, my voice steady. Mom waved a dismissive hand. Harvest will evaluate everyone. I'm sure most of the kitchen staff will be retained. And management, I pressed. My father shifted uncomfortably. Well, that's something we wanted to discuss with you privately, Alexandra, but they'll bring in their own management team, my mother interrupted. It's standard practice, but they might have a position for you elsewhere in the company. Perhaps in marketing, since you've shown some aptitude for it. Some aptitude. After 8 years of growing the business, doubling revenues and saving it from bankruptcy after my father's heart attack. I see, I said. And when were you planning to tell me about the sale, before or after you signed the contracts? My mother's eyes narrowed. We're telling you now. This meeting is your notification. Interesting timing. Just like the Thanksgiving trip decisions made months in advance with me, as the last to know. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Uncle Robert coughed. Look, Alex, Ryan interjected with his best corporate mediator voice. This is a business decision. The restaurant industry is volatile, and Harvest is offering security, a guaranteed payout. It's the smart move. I understand business decisions, I replied. What I don't understand is why, as the current manager and someone who has dedicated 8 years to this restaurant, I wasn't included in any discussions until now. My mother's patience visibly thinned. Because you're emotionally attached to the restaurant, Alexandra. You can't see it objectively. Your father and I built this business. Grandmother built it, I corrected. And according to her, will anyone who works in the business for 5 consecutive years is entitled to a 20% ownership stake, which makes me a part owner of Morgan's table. The room went absolutely silent. My mother's face drained of color. My father half rose from his chair before sinking back, clutching his chest, in what I was now recognizing as his standard manipulation tactic. Where did you hear that? My mother finally demanded. I did something revolutionary, Mom. I read grandmother's will, the public record copy. Ryan recovered first. That provision is outdated. Dad restructured the business years ago. Actually, he didn't, I replied, opening my portfolio and removing documents. I've confirmed with the state business registry. The original incorporation remains in effect, as do all provisions in grandmother's will, which means any sale requires my approval. This is ridiculous, my mother snapped. You're going to block a multi-million-dollar deal over what hurt feelings because we took one vacation without you. Not at all, I said calmly. I'm exercising my legal rights as a part owner to be included in decisions about a business I've helped build. Uncle Robert, always the would-be peacemaker, stepped in. Now, Alexandra, I'm sure we can work something out that satisfies everyone. Your parents have been planning their retirement counting on this sale. The same parents who withdrew over $40,000 from the restaurant accounts to fund a vacation they deliberately excluded me from. I countered, pulling out bank statements. Money that rightfully belongs in part to me. My mother stood up, her face flushed with anger. We had every right to use those funds. That money was compensation for years of what Mom watching me work 70-hour weeks, undermining me with staff, sabotaging marketing initiatives that were actually working. How dare you, she hissed. Family vote, Ryan suddenly announced. We vote on all major decisions, right? Everyone in favor of selling to Harvest, raise your hand. Every hand in the room went up except mine. Ryan smirked at me. There you have it, Alex. The family has voted. Interesting, I said. When exactly was this voting process established, and why wasn't I informed about it? In fact, the last time we had a family vote was about the Thanksgiving trip, which apparently happened without my knowledge as well. You're being difficult, my mother said, her voice cold. Just like you've always been difficult. Never appreciating what we've done for you, always wanting more. What you've done for me, I repeated incredulously. I gave up career opportunities to help Dad. I worked myself to exhaustion saving the restaurant after his heart attack. I increased profits by 40% in 6 months. And this is how you repay me. By selling out from under me and telling me I should be grateful for the chance to interview for a corporate position. My father finally spoke, his voice weak. Alexandra, please. The stress isn't good for my heart. Once that would have stopped me immediately. Made me back down, apologize, retreat. Not today. I'm sorry about your health, Dad, but I'm not responsible for your medical condition. And I won't let you use it to manipulate me anymore. Heather gasped. My mother's eyes widened in outrage. How can you be so selfish? Heather demanded. Dad could have another heart attack because of you. No, because of his choices, I corrected. Just like all of you made the choice to exclude me from Thanksgiving, to plan this sale behind my back, to try to invalidate my ownership claim by making me look incompetent. I turned to face Uncle Robert, the man who had taught me to ride a bike, who had always claimed to be in my corner. You knew about all of this, didn't you? The trip, the sale, everything. He couldn't meet my eyes. Alex, sometimes families make complicated decisions. Stop calling us family, I said quietly. A family doesn't do this to one of their own. My mother stepped forward, her voice like ice. Here's what's going to happen, Alexandra. You're going to sign the necessary documents approving this sale. You'll receive your 20%, which is far more than you deserve. Then you'll step aside and let this transaction proceed without further drama. And if I don't, her smile was chilling. Then you'll be removed from your position at the restaurant, effective immediately. We'll contest your ownership claim, which could take years to resolve in court. During that time, no sale can proceed and no profits can be distributed. The restaurant will likely fail without the harvest deal and you'll get nothing but legal bills. It was the ultimate ultimatum: surrender or be destroyed. You have until tomorrow to make your decision, my father added, his momentary weakness apparently forgotten. We need your answer by noon. I understand completely, I said, gathering my documents. Thank you for making everything so crystal clear. As I headed for the door, I heard my mother say to the room, she'll sign. She always gives in eventually. Ryan laughed. Classic Alex, all bark, no bite. I closed the door behind me, my hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my body. They thought they had won. They thought I would crumble under pressure, sign away my rights, and disappear with my tail between my legs. They had no idea what was coming. The next morning, they found out. Not with my signature on their documents, but with court filings blocking any sale of Morgan's Table pending resolution of ownership disputes and a temporary restraining order preventing any further withdrawals from the restaurant's accounts without dual signature authorization. The family had tried to stage a coup. It had failed spectacularly. The morning after I filed the court papers, I arrived at the restaurant early, unlocking the doors with the keys that were still mine. I'd barely slept, running on a combination of adrenaline and vindication that kept me more alert than any amount of coffee. James had connected me with Catherine Reynolds, a razor-sharp attorney specializing in family business disputes. Between my documentation and James's discreet guidance on where to look for evidence, we'd assembled a case strong enough for a judge to grant an emergency injunction, preventing any sale of the restaurant and freezing large transfers from its accounts. I was reviewing the day's reservations when my phone exploded with notifications. First my mother, then my father, then Ryan, then a cascade of other family members. I silenced it without reading the messages. They'd had months of secret conversations without me. They could wait a few hours. Sophia arrived at 8 earlier than usual. I saw the news, she said, holding up her phone with a local business website open. The headline read, Family Feud Freezes Morgan's Table Sale. I winced. That was fast. Small town. She shrugged. You okay? Better than okay, I admitted. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm standing on solid ground. As the staff arrived, I called an impromptu meeting. They gathered in the dining room, faces concerned. You've probably heard rumors, I began. Yes, my family was planning to sell Morgan's Table to Harvest Restaurant Group. No, that sale is not proceeding at this time. And no, despite what you might hear, the restaurant is not in financial trouble. Relief visibly swept through the group. Everyone knew what happened when corporate chains bought local establishments. Cost-cutting menu, standardization, staff reductions. In fact, I continued, thanks to all of you, we've had our best 2 quarters in a decade. Which is why I've filed for an injunction to protect the business and your jobs, while some family matters get sorted out. Anthony raised his hand. What happens now? With your parents, I mean. Honestly, I don't know. But I can promise you this, as long as I have any say in the matter, Morgan's Table will remain true to my grandmother's vision: quality food, fair treatment of staff, and community connection. The staff meeting had just ended when my mother stormed through the front door, my father trailing behind her. How dare you, she shouted, waving printed court documents. Do you have any idea what you've done? I gestured toward my office, away from the wide-eyed staff. Let's discuss this privately. Once the door closed, she rounded on me. You ungrateful, scheming little Careful, Mom, I interrupted. Think about what you're about to say. Because this time, I'm not backing down. You've embarrassed this entire family. The Harvests called Thomas this morning, threatening to pull their offer completely. The offer you negotiated behind my back using money from accounts you've been systematically draining. I kept my voice even. The restaurant isn't yours to sell. We built this place. My father interjected, his face alarmingly red. 30 years of our lives. Grandmother built it, I corrected again. You expanded it. And for the past 8 years, I've maintained it, often single-handedly. I've earned my place at the table literally and figuratively. We're prepared to contest this all the way to the state Supreme Court if necessary, my mother threatened. Do you really want to drag the Morgan name through years of ugly litigation? Do you? I countered. Because my attorney thinks the evidence of financial impropriety is compelling enough that the district attorney might be interested. My father blanched. My mother's eyes widened fractionally before she regained control. You wouldn't dare. Try me. Or better yet, try explaining to a jury why you diverted business funds to pay for a family vacation you deliberately excluded me from. A knock interrupted us. Sophia opened the door slightly. Sorry to interrupt, but there's a reporter from the Gazette asking for comment about the situation. My mother started toward the door. I'll handle this. Actually, I said, moving past her as current restaurant manager, I think I should address the press. The local reporter, Jenny Hayes, had known my grandmother and had covered Morgan's table since its early days. She listened attentively as I gave a carefully worded statement about family disagreements over succession planning and temporary legal measures to protect the restaurant's operations. I emphasized that business would continue as usual and that our commitment to the community remained unchanged. As Jenny was leaving, she paused. Off the record, Alex, people in town have noticed how you've revitalized this place. Whatever's happening with your family, don't let them push you out. Elizabeth would have been proud of what you've done here. Her words hit me harder than I expected. My grandmother, a woman I barely remembered but whose legacy I'd been fighting for without fully realizing it. The next blow came when Ryan arrived that afternoon, straight from the airport in a suit that probably cost more than most of our staff made in a month. This has to stop, he announced, cornering me in the kitchen during prep time. You're destroying the family. That's rich coming from you, I replied, continuing to review the evening specials. When's the last time you even worked a shift here? This isn't about who works where. It's about respecting Dad's wishes for his retirement. He deserves to cash out after all these years. And what about my years? What do I deserve? Ryan had the decency to look uncomfortable. Look, no one's saying you haven't contributed. But this was always Mom and Dad's business to dispose of as they see fit. Except it wasn't. Grandmother made sure of that. I set down my clipboard. Tell me something, Ryan. What was your cut going to be? What are you talking about? For facilitating the sale. For flying in to help with the transition. Once I was out of the picture, how much were they paying you? His silence was answer enough. That's what I thought. The local media attention quickly spread to regional business publications. By evening, Family Restaurant Drama Halt's corporate acquisition was trending on local news sites. My phone continued to blow up with messages from extended family, most expressing shock not at my parents' behavior, but at my audacity in challenging them publicly. Uncle Robert called, his voice pained. Alexandra, please. Your father isn't well. This stress could kill him. You had every opportunity to stand up for me, Uncle Robert. You chose not to. It's complicated. It's really not. You knew they were excluding me from Thanksgiving. You knew they were planning to sell the restaurant out from under me. You said nothing. I tried to mediate. Mediating would have been telling me what was happening. What you did was enable their betrayal. The pressure continued mounting. Distant relatives I barely knew called to express their disappointment in me for tearing the family apart. My mother apparently spent the day calling everyone in her contact list to share her version of events. But not everyone turned against me. The restaurant staff rallied remarkably. When my mother attempted to convince several key employees to quit in protest, they not only refused, but reported the conversations to me immediately. Sophia provided written documentation of my mother's attempts to undermine my management. 2 suppliers came forward with records of my mother attempting to delay deliveries to create service disruptions. Most unexpectedly, Betty Harrington, my grandmother's best friend and a town fixture now in her 80s, appeared at the restaurant late that evening. "I've been watching all this unfold," she told me, settling into our best table with a pot of tea. "Your grandmother Elizabeth would be having none of this nonsense." "Did you know about the will provision?" I asked. "Of course I did. I was there when she wrote it." Betty's eyes twinkled. Elizabeth knew Diane would try to edge out anyone who threatened her control. That's why she put that clause in, to protect whoever showed true commitment to her legacy. She reached into her handbag and pulled out a faded envelope. "Elizabeth left this with me. Said to give it to whoever proved they were in it for the long haul. Seems to me you've qualified." The envelope contained a handwritten letter from my grandmother dated shortly before her death, outlining her vision for the restaurant's future and expressing her hope that it would remain a true family business, not just in name, in heart. At the bottom was a postscript. "Remember, the books don't lie. Check the original incorporation papers carefully." That night, with James's guidance, I did exactly that. Hidden in the dense legal language was another bombshell. The original incorporation granted a controlling interest to any direct descendant who could prove they had independently increased the restaurant's profitability by at least 25% over a 3-year period. I had increased it by 40% in just 6 months. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for the following week. My parents arrived at the courthouse flanked by 2 attorneys, and Ryan, all wearing expressions of grim determination. My mother refused to even look at me. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, reviewed the filings with methodical care before delivering her ruling. The temporary injunction would remain in place, preventing any sale or major financial transactions until ownership could be fully determined. Based on the evidence presented, she concluded Miss Morgan has established a legitimate claim that warrants further examination. The court notes with concern the pattern of financial withdrawals immediately preceding the proposed sale, as well as documented attempts to undermine Miss Morgan's management position. These actions suggest potential bad faith negotiations that this court cannot ignore. It was a preliminary victory, but a significant one. As we left the courthouse, a reporter caught my mother's reaction on camera. "This isn't over, not by a long shot." She was right about that at least. But for the first time since that lonely Thanksgiving morning, I wasn't afraid of the fight ahead. I had the truth on my side, unexpected allies in my corner, and my grandmother's words guiding me. The books don't lie. Neither would I not anymore. No matter how this ended, I would no longer be the silent, compliant daughter absorbing everyone else's selfish choices. That Alexandra was gone for good. 3 weeks after the court hearing, my father called a family crisis meeting. The judge's ruling had effectively blocked any immediate sale, and Harvest Restaurant Group had officially withdrawn their offer, unwilling to wait through potentially years of litigation. The meeting was set at the restaurant after hours neutral territory, or so they claimed. I arrived to find not just my immediate family, but a full contingent of aunts, uncles, and cousins. A jury of my peers assembled to render judgment. My father sat at the head of the largest table, looking frail and defeated. My mother stood beside him, her posture rigid with barely contained fury. Ryan and Heather flanked them, a united front. "Alexandra," my father began as I took a seat across from them. "This has gone far enough. You've made your point. Now it's time to end this madness before you destroy everything we've built. I'm not the one who tried to sell the restaurant without consulting a part owner, I replied evenly. Part owner, my mother scoffed. You wouldn't have known about that clause if James hadn't violated attorney-client privilege. Public records, Mom. The will is public record. Uncle Robert leaned forward. Alex, we understand you feel hurt about the Thanksgiving trip. That was unfortunate timing. But this response is disproportionate. Disproportionate, I repeated. They excluded me from a family vacation using money from the restaurant I help run. They planned to sell the business out from under me after I spent 8 years of my life building it up. They actively undermine me with staff and suppliers. Which part of my response is disproportionate? The part where you're tearing this family apart, Aunt Patricia interjected. Do you have any idea what this has done to your father's health? To your mother's standing in the community? I didn't create this situation, I said. I'm just refusing to be its victim. Ryan shook his head. Always the martyr, aren't you, Alex? Has it occurred to you that Mom and Dad have the right to retire? To enjoy the fruits of their labor? Their labor, what about mine? What about grandmother's? This restaurant isn't just an asset to be liquidated. It's a legacy, one I've worked to preserve while you were building your tech career 3,000 miles away. A career I offered to put on hold to help with the transition after the sale he shot back. I was willing to step up. After I'd been pushed out, I corrected. After all the hard work was done. You were coming back to take credit and add a line to your resume, not to actually help the business. My mother interrupted, her voice cold. Enough of this back and forth. We've tried reasoning with you, Alexandra. We've tried legal channels. Since none of that has worked, let me be absolutely clear about what happens next. She leaned forward, eyes locked on mine. You've never been good enough. Not as a daughter, not as a businesswoman, not as a Morgan. You've always been too sensitive, too emotional, too invested in the wrong things. Your father and I have spent years trying to mold you into someone worthy of the family name, and you've fought us at every turn. The room went silent. Even those who had sided against me looked uncomfortable at the naked cruelty in her voice. Mom Heather said quietly, "That's not." "Be quiet, Heather," our mother snapped. "Alexandra needs to hear this. We tolerated your little power trip at the restaurant because it was convenient, because it freed us up to plan our retirement. But make no mistake, you were always temporary, a placeholder until we figured out the next steps." I felt strangely calm in the face of her venom. And those next steps never included me, did they? Why would they? You lack vision. You're so obsessed with your grandmother's outdated ideals that you can't see the bigger picture. Do you have any idea what that property is worth to developers? The restaurant itself is just a small part of what could have been a very lucrative deal. And there it was, the truth finally laid bare. It had never been about preserving the restaurant or my grandmother's legacy. It had been about selling out completely. The restaurant sits on almost an acre of prime commercial real estate, my father added, his voice stronger now. The Harvest offer was just phase 1. They have development partners who were prepared to build a mixed-use complex once the restaurant was established as their flagship location. Ryan couldn't contain his enthusiasm. It would have transformed the whole downtown area. Condos, boutique, retail, office space, a complete redevelopment worth millions. And none of you thought I deserved to know about this, I asked. We never thought you'd fight back, my mother admitted, her voice tinged with something almost like respect. You've always given in eventually. Always backed down when pushed. We never imagined you'd go this far. Uncle Robert tried again to mediate. There's still a way forward here. Alexandra, if you drop the legal action, perhaps your parents could agree to a more equitable distribution. This isn't about money, I interrupted. This is about respect, about honesty, about family actually behaving like family. Oh, spare us the sentimentality, my mother said. Family is business. It always has been. I looked around the table at the faces of people I'd known my entire life. Some looked uncomfortable. Others nodded in agreement with my mother. Meredith studied her manicure, avoiding eye contact. Only Heather seemed genuinely conflicted, her eyes darting between me and our parents. If that's true, I said finally, then you've been running your family business very poorly. Because successful businesses are built on trust, communication, and mutual respect, none of which exist here. I stood up, gathering my things. I won't be dropping the legal action. I won't be signing over my rights. And I won't be apologizing for standing up for myself. You'll regret this, my mother hissed. When the legal bills pile up and the stress becomes unbearable, you'll wish you had taken our original offer. I paused at the door, turning to face them one last time. You know what I regret? Wasting so many years trying to earn the approval of people who were never going to give it. Sacrificing my dreams for a family who saw me as nothing but free labor. Believing that if I just worked hard enough, long enough, sacrificed enough, you'd finally see my worth. My voice grew stronger with each word. But that was my mistake. One I won't be repeating. My grandmother saw something in me that you never could. She built this place with a vision that you were willing to destroy for a quick payday. I won't let that happen. I looked each of them in the eye before concluding. This restaurant stays in the family. I am the family now. The silence as I walked out was deafening. Later that night, Heather showed up at my apartment, her eyes red from crying. Is it true, what Mom said about never thinking you were good enough? I let her in too emotionally drained to maintain the anger. It's always been clear where I stood in the family hierarchy. I didn't know, she said quietly. About any of it. The Thanksgiving trip they told me you couldn't come because you had to work. The sale they said you were on board. I should have checked with you directly. Yes, you should have. I've been self-absorbed. I know that. She twisted her hands nervously. But I never wanted to hurt you, Alex. You've always been there for me, even when I was a total mess. It was true. Despite everything, I'd bailed Heather out of countless scrapes over the years. Loaned her money, given her advice covered for her with our parents. What do you want, Heather? To help if I can. I found something in Dad's office while looking for a phone charger. She pulled out a thumb drive. It's their emails with Harvest and the developers. The whole plan going back almost a year. The Thanksgiving trip was deliberately scheduled to coincide with their final planning phase. They needed you distracted. I took the drive surprised by the unexpected alliance. Why are you giving me this? She looked down. Because I heard what you said tonight about family acting like family. And I realized I've never really been much of a sister to you. Maybe it's time I started. It was a small olive branch, but a meaningful one. As Heather left, she turned back. For what it's worth, I think Grandmother would be proud of you. I know I am. The thumb drive contained exactly what Heather had described: emails, contracts, development plans, all detailing the scheme to sell not just the restaurant, but the entire property. More damning were communications specifically discussing how to manage Alexandra's expectations and minimize her potential interference. One email from my mother to Ryan was particularly revealing. Once she's removed from the equation, we can proceed with a full development plan. In the meantime, keep her believing this is just about the restaurant. She's always been easy to manipulate when she thinks she's preserving your grandmother's precious legacy. I forwarded everything to my attorney. The evidence was overwhelming, not just of their plans to exclude me, but of potential fraud in how they'd represented the deal to other family members and investors. 2 days later, my father called. His voice sounded older, more subdued. Your mother and I are separating, he said without preamble. After 40 years, I finally see what she's been doing. To the family, to the business, to you. I said nothing, waiting. I don't expect your forgiveness, Alexandra. But I want you to know I'm sorry. For the Thanksgiving trip. For the sale. For not standing up for you when I should have. Why now? I asked. After everything, why the sudden change of heart? A long pause. Because I found the letters. From your grandmother to me, written before she died. Warning me about your mother's ambitions. About how she would try to destroy what Elizabeth built. I didn't believe it then. I didn't want to see it. And now I see too clearly. She never loved the restaurant, Alexandra. She only saw it as a stepping stone. A means to an end. His voice broke slightly. I let her manipulate me for years. Worse, I let her manipulate you. My own daughter. It wasn't enough. Not yet. Too little, too late. But it was something a crack in the unified front they'd presented for my entire life. What happens now? I asked. That's up to you. I'm stepping back completely. The restaurant, the legal battle, I'm withdrawing from all of it. Whatever you decide, I'll support. And Mom? He sighed heavily. Your mother will never change. She'll never admit she was wrong. The best we can hope for is that she'll eventually accept defeat gracefully. We both knew that wasn't likely. My mother didn't do graceful defeat. But her allies were falling away one by one. First, Heather. Now my father. Even Ryan had gone suspiciously silent after the disastrous family meeting. The final confrontation had revealed what I'd always suspected, but never fully accepted. My mother had never seen me as anything but a tool to be used and discarded. A placeholder. A temporary solution until something better came along. But in that revelation came freedom. I no longer needed to earn her approval or respect. I no longer needed to prove my worth to someone incapable of recognizing it. I had proven it to myself. And in the end, that was what mattered most. 6 months after the family meeting that changed everything, Morgan's Table celebrated its grand reopening. Not because it had ever closed, but because it had been fundamentally transformed, just not in the way my parents had planned. The restaurant now featured a new logo incorporating elements from my grandmother's original design. The menu balanced classic favorites with innovative new offerings developed by Sophia, now officially our executive chef. The dining room had been renovated to create more intimate seating areas while preserving the warm, welcoming atmosphere my grandmother had envisioned. Most importantly, the ownership structure had been formalized through a court-approved settlement. I now owned controlling interest with minority shares distributed to key staff members who had proven their loyalty during the crisis. No one could sell the restaurant out from under us now. It truly belonged to those who loved it. The opening night was a tremendous success. Longtime customers mingled with new patrons, all enjoying the evolution of a local institution. Local media covered the event, enthusiastically portraying it as a triumphant revival rather than the contentious family drama it had been just months earlier. Heather arrived early, helping with last-minute preparations. Our relationship had slowly mended over the past few months. She'd moved back to town, enrolled in business classes at the community college, and even worked occasional shifts at the restaurant to learn the operations. "This is amazing, Alex," she said, surveying the packed dining room. "Grandmother would have loved it." "I think she would," I agreed. Heather hesitated. "Have you heard from Mom?" "Not directly. Her attorney sent mine another settlement offer last week. And? Same as before. She wants a cash buyout for her remaining shares at an inflated value." I countered with a fair market offer. Balls in her court. My mother had fought the legal battle with characteristic tenacity but diminishing support. When the evidence from Heather's thumb drive became part of the court record, many family members who had initially sided with my parents withdrew their support. The revelation that they had been misled about the true nature of the development deal changed perspectives dramatically. Ryan had returned to Seattle, after failing to broker a compromise that would have still resulted in the restaurant being sold, just with better terms for me. His startup had faltered in his absence, and he was now desperately trying to salvage it. Our relationship remained strained, but civil, limited to occasional text messages and holiday greetings. My father made more sincere efforts at reconciliation. After his separation from my mother became permanent, he seemed to emerge from a fog of passive compliance that had defined him for decades. He never asked to return to the restaurant, but often came in as a customer, sitting quietly at the bar and observing the changes with what appeared to be genuine pride. 2 months after the reopening, he asked to meet privately. "I have something for you," he said, sliding a worn leather portfolio across the table. "Your grandmother's original recipes and business notes. Your mother wanted to throw them out years ago, but I kept them hidden in my workshop." I opened it carefully, finding handwritten recipe cards, business plans, sketched on napkins, and photographs of the restaurant's early days. It was a treasure trove of my grandmother's vision. "I should have given these to you years ago," he said. "When you first started working here. She always meant for you to have them." "How do you know that?" "Because she told me. The week before she died, she said, 'Thomas, that granddaughter of yours has the heart for this place. Not like Diane, not like you. She'll understand what it's meant to be.' I didn't really understand what she meant until I saw you fighting for it this past year. It wasn't a complete healing, too much had happened for that. But it was a beginning, a foundation we could potentially build upon." My father had conditions for rebuilding our relationship, and I had mine. No more manipulation. No more guilt trips about his health. Complete transparency in all communications. It wasn't easy for either of us, but we were trying. The most surprising development came 3 months after the settlement, when Ryan called with an unexpected request. "My company didn't make it," he admitted. "The investors pulled out. I'm essentially starting over. I'm sorry to hear that," I said, meaning it despite everything. "I'm thinking of moving back home, at least temporarily, and I was wondering." He paused, clearly struggling with the words, "if there might be a position at the restaurant." "Not management," he added quickly. "I know I haven't earned that, but something to get back on my feet." It was the first time in our adult lives that Ryan had acknowledged needing help, let alone ask me for it directly. After some consideration, I offered him a position in our newly expanded marketing department, an area where his tech experience could actually be valuable. "This isn't forgiveness," I told him clearly. "It's an opportunity to earn back trust. You'll start at entry-level pay like anyone else. You'll report to our marketing director, not to me. And at the first sign of undermining or manipulation, you're out." "I understand," he said, humbled in a way I'd never heard before. "Thank you." My mother remained the sole holdout. She refused direct communication, working exclusively through attorneys. She'd moved to Arizona after the divorce, reportedly telling friends she needed distance from the disappointment of watching her life's work being destroyed by an ungrateful daughter. I no longer let her words hurt me. The woman who had crafted the Thanksgiving abandonment as a deliberate tactic had shown me exactly who she was. I had no obligation to keep seeking approval from someone incapable of giving it. 1 year to the day after I woke up alone on Thanksgiving, Morgan's table hosted a special dinner service. Not just for customers, but for staff and their families. Tables were pushed together to create one long communal dining experience. Sophia and her team outdid themselves with a feast that honored traditional flavors while incorporating elements from the diverse backgrounds of our staff. I stood at the head of the table looking at the faces gathered there. Heather nervous but proud in her new role as events coordinator. My father separate from the main group but present, making hesitant conversation with James Winters. Ryan still finding his footing, but genuinely trying to contribute. Sophia and the kitchen staff, the lifeblood of the restaurant. Betty Harrington, at 91, raising a glass in silent tribute to my grandmother. They weren't all family by blood, but they were family by choice, by shared values, by mutual respect. Before we eat, I said, raising my glass, I want to thank everyone here. A year ago, I thought I had lost my family. What I discovered instead was that family isn't defined by DNA or last names. It's defined by who stands with you when it matters, who tells you the truth even when it's difficult, who values your contributions rather than taking them for granted. I looked around at the gathered faces, my voice steady and clear. I've learned that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary. That standing up for yourself doesn't mean standing alone. And that sometimes the family we create is stronger than the family we're born into. I raised my glass higher to Morgan's table. Not just a restaurant, but a home. Not just a business, but a legacy. And to all of you who make it possible every day. The chorus of hear, hear, and clinking glasses filled the room with warmth and possibility. As we enjoyed the meal together, I realized I had finally found what I'd been seeking all along. Not approval from people determined to withhold it, but authentic connection with those who valued me for exactly who I was. The abandonment on Thanksgiving had been devastating, a deliberate act of exclusion designed to put me in my place. Instead, it had set me free from the endless cycle of trying to please people who would never be satisfied. Free from the burden of being the perfect, compliant daughter. Free to build something authentic and meaningful on my own terms. The greatest revenge wasn't in winning the legal battle or taking control of the restaurant. It was in breaking free from toxic patterns and creating something beautiful from the wreckage. It was in recognizing my own worth independent of others' validation. As the evening wound down, I stepped outside for a moment of quiet reflection. The autumn air carried the same crispness as that fateful Thanksgiving morning, but everything else had changed, most of all me. I no longer feared being abandoned because I had finally stopped abandoning myself. Has your family ever excluded you from important events or decisions? How did you handle it? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more stories of family drama and personal growth, and share with someone who might need to hear that standing up for yourself is worth it even when it's difficult. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, the family we choose is sometimes more important than the family we're born into. Until next time,